Step into the world of the Superpro podcast, where we lay out the blueprints of home service excellence. Join us as we break down the wins and struggles of pros who are at the top of their game. Put their wisdom into practice as you build your company's success.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another special episode of the Superpro podcast, the heartbeat of home service excellence. I am Roland. I'm your host. I'm also the co-founder of Housecall Pro, and I'm an advocate for all the hardworking pros out there that help make our homes better, safer, and more comfortable. Through Housecall Pro, I've had the privilege of supporting hundreds of thousands of you guys, pros just like you, empowering you guys to achieve more, stress less, and redefine success. Today, I'm super excited. We've got Huck on the show. He is the master tech and also owner of Next Level Chimneys. You guys are based up in Washington, pretty close to Seattle, and just a little off to the side there. And Next Level Chimneys, focused a lot on getting national certificates. You guys are looking to hit 1.3 million in revenue this year with 5 employees and 3 trucks. You did this all in pretty much like 3 years, maybe almost 4 years. So you've grown fast. So I'm super excited. Thank you, Dan, for coming on the show today, and excited to have you here.
No, thank you.
Nice. Well, tell me, what was your journey like? What brought you into the chimney space? At what point in your life were you like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll learn every single thing about it?
It was 1999. I got out of the Army, and I had no path. I went and met with my uncle, who gave me a job, and in 2008, decided to just start stepping out on my own, and I've been sweeping chimneys for 24, 25 years now.
Wow. Yeah. So, you've had so much in the field experience, but even with all that experience, as you were building your business, you felt it's important to go get, those national certificates, get out there, get all the accreditation. Why do you think that's been really important, specifically in the chimney space and for your business to help you grow so fast?
Oh, man, there's in this state, you're not required to have any sort of chimney certification, just license, bond, insurance. And you get a lot of hacks that they will mess up chimneys, and you're playing with fire. It's just not
literally playing with fire. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm tired of fixing companies' work. I'm not perfect by any means. For the first 15 years, I did it wrong. And I met another local company up here who really turned me on to the guilds and national certifications and classes. And I kind of dove into that and realized there's a lot of ways to improve. And that's what I try and do.
Yeah, I think, there's like the outward perception of having their certificates, which, helps build trust with the homeowners. But I think there's also the internal confidence that even after, like you said, you're humble enough to say, like, I did it wrong for 15 years. That's hard to say. And then learning that you can do better, I think it has two effects, both like externally, but also internally. And I think that's definitely helped you here.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, what was the stepping stone where you were like, all right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this myself, I'm going to start my own business. You're a couple years into it now, more than a couple years, but like, what was that like moment where you're like, that's it, we're going into business?
I felt old. I started to realize that, I was working for another company. I was making $27 an hour with over 20 years experience. And I felt like I was running out of time. In 15 years, I would not have retirement or my own home or, I'm 43 now. So I was 40 when I stepped out. And I felt like, I needed to have a company. And then I read a book that explained to me the difference between a company and a job. Is a company will operate when you're not there. And a job, if I fall off a ladder and break my legs, I'm screwed. So I strive to get employees, get them certified, and get them trained in all aspects. So when I'm not there, it can still work.
I think that's sometimes one of the hardest steps is when you realize it's you've got a limited set of time or a limited set of capabilities, or as a physical individual, something happens to you, that's it. and sure you can get workers comp and like all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's really relying on that piece. But the step, which is, the ultimate one, is start your own business so that one day you can retire, you can sell it, you can step back and still use all the knowledge that you've gained over the years. That's not useless. That's probably the most important piece of it. But it sounds like you've got a pretty good training methodology. Like, how are you finding employees? How are you getting them up to speed? Because you've seen a lot, but what are you doing?
Well, we're just constantly running ads on Indeed and little places like Craigslist and whatnot. And a lot of people don't last more than a month. It takes a lot. I need to know that they're going to be okay on high ladders and scaffolding, and they can carry mortar and bricks. And bricklaying is not an easy job. But once I have some good people, then I start to invest in certification classes and things of that nature. It's been tough. I've only been able to find 3 solid guys in the last 3 years.
Wow. And how many would you say you've gone through to get to these 3 solid employees?
Oh, at least 15 or 20.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So imagine you were going to start your business from scratch again tomorrow. What would you look for? What are some questions that you ask to help, kind of determine if they're a fit for the job and you think they're going to have staying power?
Any construction experience. You got to know how to run even basic hand tools. And then if they have roofing experience or anywhere where they're just, they're working on a height is really helpful. And I kind of prefer people to not have any actual chimney experience because I don't want them to bring bad habits. I'd rather start from scratch. And I try and work their pay up very well, very quickly. They're usually bumped up $5 to $7 in the first year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's when they've got the staying power, and that's when you're going to really start to invest in them. And that's when you're going to be in it for the long haul.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then I pretty much, I treat them very well because I do not want to train another person. It's really difficult there's a lot to learn in chimneys.
Yeah, I can only imagine. What's been some of the other challenges you've kind of faced in getting to this point? I mean, breaking $1 million is a huge milestone. You did that last year, but what's something that you didn't expect but was just really difficult to get? Taxes. Yeah,
taxes. I hate it. So I had all this experience in the field, and I've worked for many other companies, but I never learned how to do an office job. Never knew how to actually run the business. And neither did my wife. And we're both kind of winging it and learning it as we go. We've made quite a few mistakes, but we're still here. We're still getting through them. But, I really wish that I would have learned a lot more office related stuff.
And how have you been learning it? Obviously you've been learning it the hard way, it sounds like, but how have you sped up your learning to really catch up on that front?
Hiring people, hiring Conquer, hiring coaches. If we don't know it, we have to learn it. And it's a lot easier to just hire somebody that knows how to do it.
Yeah. I think that's a common mistake that I think young business owners fall into, where they're like, oh, okay, I have to learn everything. I have to learn it all myself. And the reality is there's so many people that have gone through the exact same steps, bring in a coach, bring in a mentor, because the price that you pay for that is just, it's worth its weight in gold. Because you don't have to do that hard stuff.
Over the 2 or 3 years it takes for me to actually learn the inside and outside of the office, that in the long term costs more than just hiring somebody at the beginning. It really does. It's nice to know it now, but I could have spent more time focused on what I am good
at. I really think that's a really important thing to focus on, and a great golden nugget, which is what are you really good at, and hire out the rest.
Yep.
I think when it comes to what are $20 an hour jobs that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing,
right.
focus on getting other people to do those so that you can focus on other things, because you build leverage that way. And I think that's a hard thing to learn, because in the beginning you're like, oh, I'm spending all this money. But what you're gaining is your time back, so you can spend it earning much more for your company, working on those really high value tasks.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, tell me about...
Even if people can't, at the beginning afford to hire a full-time office staff, of course, hire mentors, the coaching courses, and, you only visit them once a week or something for a flat rate. I mean, that has helped us immensely.
Yeah. And in terms of office, so do you have full-time office now or part-time, or how are you running that in your operation right now?
Just my wife. Yeah.
And she's handling all that for you?
Yeah, we did have a secretary, remote secretary, for almost a year and a half. But then we realized she was not capable as well. So it was stuff that my wife could have been handling. So
yeah. It
was just kind of, we were paying somebody to do something we could have done, and then we needed coaching to help with the extra steps.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, look, sometimes your best employees are, either family or spouses, partners, and you don't have to go at it alone. And those people have the right incentives too, beyond just what you pay them. So they're going to go that extra mile, to make sure that things go right. And they take that extra bit of ownership and accountability that I think is so important, especially in just a young home service business, just breaking $1 million. Like, you got to have that team set up. So you without her. Yeah. So you when you're out there in the customer's home, you're a big proponent of kind of this no pressure approach.
Absolutely.
Tell me about how you do that and what makes you different, and how are you building next level?
When a customer calls us for a sweep or an inspection, that's usually our first call. A lot of companies will go out there and they'll try and sell them a fireplace grate or tools or a whole bunch of work. I don't do that. I charge them for their initial inspection, and my only job, and my guys, their only job, is to inspect the chimney, give them our findings, and a price to fix it. If they don't want to book with us, that's fine. We've already made money for the appointment, and they have all the knowledge they could possibly have. If they do book with us, that's great, but I'd rather just give them all the knowledge. I don't want to push the sales. I don't pay my guys commission. I've thought about it, but then I risk ending up with somebody who's selling stuff the customer doesn't need.
Yeah.
Haven't quite figured out how to work that yet. I want my guys to make a comfortable living, bonuses and such, but I do not want them to be pushy. So.
Yeah. I think your approach, which is, if you're out there, you're outcome independent, whatever the customer decides to do is whatever ends up happening, is a really good way, especially if it's a high value service, and, you make sure that you're priced accordingly too, that's a great way to actually end up selling something, because the customer ultimately feels comfortable knowing that Dan didn't just recommend me a bunch of stuff that I didn't really need, or I felt like I had to make the decision now, or even worse in the chimney space, which is, there's a lot of fear, that you can instill in the homeowner too, burning down a home and those things. It's really easy to make irrational choices. And so I think especially in your industry, especially if you're in chimney, dryer vent for sure too, that space, kind of not selling against that is going to help you build a long-term brand and a long-term company for sure.
Well, that's the hope. There's some competitors out there that are doing free estimates, and honestly, I don't know how they're in business. That's a lot of fuel, a lot of time, but they're doing it, and the only way they can pay for that, in my mind, is by selling as much as they can. And, I'd rather charge for the estimate and give the customer the truth. So.
Yeah. And I'm sure that probably helps you too when you're dealing with, people when they're switching out a house. Because I know when we bought our place, one of the inspections, we needed to have it done.
Yeah.
That was part of our contingency. So I think, you'll probably get people that are just trying to understand what's the state of something, and maybe it's something I need to fix in the future or not, but they're not going into it thinking, you know what, I've been wanting to upgrade this or whatnot. It's just, what's the state of things? But I think the approach you're taking makes it a lot easier for people to come back and be like, oh yeah, Dan, let me go find his inspection report. Okay, yeah, let me give him a call, when they're ready, versus, you're like, no, you got to have this new thing or that new thing.
Right.
And, they're like, I'm buying a house and, that's not the top of my list. I like your strategy and your approach. And I mean, you've been able to do really well based upon your reviews and be able to break that $1 million mark, like 2.5 years into the business. So you're doing it right.
Yeah. I think there was a year we came up 9,000 short of $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of angry.
Yeah. You're like, oh, if only I'd gotten that one more big job or something.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about, when it comes to you working for people previously, you said, for 15 years and then working for your own business. What are some things that you're doing different? Maybe you saw some things, or, what are some things where you're like, I know now when I do my business, I'm going to do it this way because it's a better way to do it. What are some of those kind of golden nuggets?
I've worked for a lot of companies, and I've tried to take the good from all of them and blend that together and then eliminate the bad. Mm-hmm. I've worked for some that are all commission-based, sell. And that is definitely not happening. I could tell working for them that customers can see right through that.
Yeah.
And then I've worked for companies that are incredible bricklayers, but know nothing about chimneys and how they draft and the physics behind it. It's kind of like fluid dynamics. And so I took great bricklaying skills from them. And then I've worked for companies that weren't great bricklayers, but when it came to the codes and the knowledge and the classes and certifications, they were incredible. And I took that from them, and I just try and blend it all together. And it's working.
Yeah, it's obviously working what you're doing. So I think maybe even within that is like a good tip for people looking to get into business is, you're probably gonna have some prior experience before you start your business, and maybe just sit down and go like, hey, what did this company do good? What could they improve on? And do that for each experience you have. And if you do that, then you have a much better idea of where you want to start with your own business. And I think a lot of people kind of skip that step. Or they already have it kind of in their head, and then they know as they're building it because they've been in the industry like you have for so long. It's kind of like, okay, now I know what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do.
And one huge thing I stick to, and sometimes it's really difficult to stick with it, but I'm 100% people over profit. My guys, without them, my lights wouldn't be on. So my guys are paid well. My guys are treated well. Some come and take advantage of that, and then they're gone. They last a month, maybe a couple months. But the guys that I have that really stick with it, I can't say enough about them. Like, they're just incredible, and I spoil them. So it's people over profit. I've worked for other companies that are, I had 20 plus years experience in national certifications, and I was only making $27 an hour. Yeah. And up here, that is not a living. So I definitely treat my guys better than any other company I've ever worked for. It's a huge thing for me.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of people that say, oh, customer first, customer serve. But the reality is it's people first, and they will serve your customers, you know? And that's kind of exactly how you put it, which is like people over profit. And, if you spoil them, there's no reason for them to ever leave. They're going to stay with you forever. Right. And based upon the training and stuff that you're investing in them, you're going to get a lot back out of that in the long term, because you're really investing in people. And I think a lot of people sometimes forget that. They're like, oh, I need this role, I need this role, I need this role. And, and then they got to build this crazy hiring and training flywheel. They constantly have to hire, fire, train, hire, fire, train. And it makes it hard to grow, that's something to keep it in the back of your mind.
And I like to think of, if my competitor offered my guy more money than I can pay him, how would I keep him?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I try and think outside the box a little bit. So.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good thought exercise, to always think about, maybe once a quarter, think about what if I couldn't afford to do something, or meet someone's, offer, because someone might be able to offer them a lot of money because they're doing commission-based sales, but that might fall through, and so those are temporary ways to try to lure people around. And I think, yeah, you're right. If there's other creative ways, other opportunities, being able to take their truck home, other benefits and perks,
I had them taking vans home, and then one of the vans got stolen. But now they're not taking them home. But no, I do think, like I had a guy whose car broke down, and I just gave him my extra personal car. Like, here you go. So I don't want them struggling.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit yourself, in order to be able to provide that. And knowing when to do that in the right time will definitely build the most loyal types of employees, that you could wish for sure. So when you started the company, did you start with Housecall Pro right out of the gate, or did you add it on a little later? How did you come across Housecall Pro?
I'm not sure if I can name other companies, but I started with another one that's, we'll just say it's not a circle. And, they were horrible. They didn't have anything. All I could do was collect payments. That was it.
Yeah.
My wife decided to go with Housecall Pro, and it's just been uphill since then, or downhill. I mean, everything's just going smoothly. It's getting better and better every month that goes by.
Yeah. And so when she came to you and was like, all right, Dan, we're going to use this thing. What was your first reaction? Were you like, oh yeah, let's do it? Or because you're looking for something else? Or you're like, did it take a little bit of convincing?
Actually, I was pretty for it. The company I had just worked for beforehand was still handwriting everything, still writing checks. They were definitely stuck in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And they were not going paperless. They, you'd get in the morning, you'd have a printout of your entire route. And it's nice to have it on a user interface, it's digital.
Yep. And if it changes, you can change it in real time versus, what are you going to do? Call the office and you got to get another printout or collect checks. That's difficult.
I was all for it. I didn't think it would be much better than the other one that we tried using, but I was wrong. It's great. I mean,
and what's like a feature that you use now, like every day, or something that you think you're like, oh man, if only we'd started using that right out of the gate?
Expense cards.
Expense cards. Wow. Okay. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So I think we have a limit of $1,000, maybe $1,500, and it's a pool for the guys. And when they go their separate routes, they each need fuel. Sometimes they need to stop and get a tool break, so a cordless drill or something.
Yep.
And it just makes it so much easier than having to reschedule something or go buy it and deliver it to them. It's really helpful.
And then you're able to see what they spent and control the limits, and you don't have to worry so much about what's the money going towards and tracking the cash and losing the receipt, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they never bring the receipts back.
Well, I guess now with expense cards, you can see everything they do, so you don't have to worry about that quite as much, which is nice. Yeah. What about on the customer experience side? Is there anything that you think Housecall Pro delivers that you didn't really know when you first started, but you're like, aha, this is that one thing that helps us look really good?
I love the messaging feature. I can message them, I can call them, and they don't have my personal number. Mm-hmm. Customers, when they get my personal number, they love to call me at 10 o'clock at night or text me on Sunday, or, I have that barrier between me and them when I use Housecall Pro app to call or text. I really like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize this, but an impediment to growth is that the customers get your phone and then you can never get out from underneath it.
Yeah.
And so when you're building a durable business, you want to have a business phone number, a business line where all the texts are coming from, so that one day, if you're no longer there because you sell it or because you're working on other parts of the business, that you can transition that role to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think too many people that get stuck in the here's my personal number game, and all of a sudden, if you're no longer there, well, who are they going to call? And so you want the business number saved in their phone, not your personal number.
The last time, or the last company I worked for, again, they weren't digital. So if I'm running a little late or ahead of schedule, I need to call the customer to let them know. Mm-hmm. And that's with my phone. Now they have caller ID and they feel they can call me whenever they want. And I'm not the company, well, back then. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point too, because, even though you try to do your best to hire technicians and folks on your team that will stay with your company forever, there will be turnover. And down the road, when those customers call in, you don't want them calling them because they might have moved on, doing their own thing, working for somebody else. You want that customer to call the business back rather than like an individual. So that's another good golden nugget that I think not enough people really think about until down the road. They're like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd given the company number rather than my personal number out there. Yeah. So Dan, what do you have any kind of parting words of wisdom? Maybe something that you would have told yourself like 10 years ago. Anything you can share with our listeners and viewers? Just some words of wisdom.
Don't give up. Keep trying. When it gets hard, just try harder. It's gonna be a battle whenever you're running the business, and don't be afraid to learn new things or hire people that know it. Mm-hmm. And, God, Housecall Pro has just saved our company. I mean, it really, really has. There's so much that you guys do through that app and through the computer that my wife handles that probably would have tanked us if we didn't, we don't know how to do it. A lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, being able to be humble enough to, ask for help or hire people that can help or that might be able to do it better than you is super important and is hard to sometimes take, but that's the best kind of feedback, the best kind of thing that you can do for your business long term. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys are doing at Next Level Chimney, and I'm excited to see where you guys head. And for all of you that are listening, we'll talk to you and see you all next week. Thanks so much, Dan.
The Superpro podcast is brought to you by Housecall Pro, the leading platform for the home service industry. Housecall Pro streamlines your workflows and simplifies everything from scheduling and dispatching to communication and billing. Unlock the full potential of your home service business with Housecall Pro. Work smarter and more efficiently with streamlined workflows and detailed analytics. Win more business and serve your customers well, every single time. Join more than 40,000 home service pros who have already revolutionized their businesses. Work smarter with streamlined workflows, get organized with centralized information, and scale your business your way. Learn more at housecallpro.com.